to all of you. Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon, Jai Hind. I hope all of you are doing great. Now, in today's session, we will be discussing a topic that is not very directly applicable to your Indian polity syllabus, but forms a very important question every year in your answer writing for the mains. Now, there are a few UPSC examinations wherein subjective paper is also part of your examination process. Whether it is your Civil Services Mains exam or it is your UPSC Assistant Commandant exam. Now, in that scenario, every year there is a question around the role of women, the perception around the women empowerment, or how the role of women has been changing in the society. Now, in this situation, many of us know things broadly, but still, at times, we are unable to bring them out in a very clear manner. So, a very good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon, Manikantji. Manikantji, in today's session, we will be undertaking class 7th NCERT of Indian Polity, and we will be doing the step unit of gender. Okay. So, the topic that we will be undertaking today is chapter 4, growing up as boys and girls. Now, this is class 7th NCERT of Indian Polity. Now, this topic essentially will make you realize two things. First, how essentially our constitution acknowledges the diversity of sex and gender. Okay. Second thing that you will be able to understand with this chapter is that how society functions versus how society should function. Clear? So, we will be studying all of these things in light of the constitution as well as the precedences that have been set up in the society. Clear? Okay. So, very good afternoon to all of you who have joined me now in this session. I welcome every one of you here. And please do let me know, am I audible loud and clear? Now, this topic is very, very important. So, even though we have heard a lot about the role of women, okay, and the term gender, we might have heard commonly, okay, it is something that we experience in our lives on daily basis. It is effectively a determining factor in various things, and this is essentially also helpful to undertake how the individuals should perform or how they should act, how they should be in the civil society. Now, before starting off with this chapter, okay, before starting off with this thing, I have a very clear question to ask. What is the difference between sex and gender? Now, at times, not few, but many people use these two terms interchangeably. There are various phenomena, there are various stereotypes, there are various stigmas which are attached to these terms. Okay. So, the question that arises is, before we jump onto this topic of how growing up as boys and girls, the first question is, what is the difference between the term sex and the term gender? Okay. Now, these are some very important things that we must understand before we undertake anything. Okay. Is there anyone who can give me a very appropriate answer to this? What is the difference between sex and gender? Okay. Now, when we talk about these two simple terms, okay, sex, okay, it essentially means the biological distinction. Okay, the biological or the physical distinctions that differentiates between a male and a female. Okay, now when we talk about the term gender, okay, gender is something that has got a higher social value. Clear? Now gender essentially attributes to the social value, okay, and also primarily to the cultural distinctions that have been made. Okay, now when we talk about these cultural distinctions, okay, these are a few things that have also that also happen by virtue of some innate habits. The societies across the world have developed specific gender roles. Okay, and what are those gender roles? There are specific attributes, there are specific behaviors, there are specific activities which are considered appropriate for men, and there are a few activities which are considered appropriate for only women. Now, these activities are different from those which are essentially, we have seen the activities defined for the other gender. Now, we also need to understand one thing, that these so-called gender roles, they are transmitted through various actions of the society, or we can also call them the agents of socialization. Now, the first agent of socialization is our family. Then from family, we move to our schools, we move to our colleges, then we move to our peer groups. Okay. And at times, the media, the social media, print media, electronic media, that also acts as an agent of socialization. Okay. So now in this chapter, we will understand these gender roles, okay, the role of women versus the role of men, okay, with various examples. Okay, now this topic takes an example of a boy in Samoa. Okay, so we will have an example of the Samoan society from the 1920s, wherein the children did not have to go school and they learned responsibilities like fishing, household activities at very early age. Okay, now we will be comparing these things, okay, with an Indian society. Now, this also takes an example from Madhya Pradesh in 1960s, wherein boys and girls, they attended separate schools, they played in separate grounds, and had distinct expectations regarding their future roles. Boys were expected to be manly, and they were expected to act, play, and live in a more rough manner, while the girls were expected to be soft and prepare for domestic roles. So, when we talk about these early experiences are very, very critical in shaping the perception of a young child of themselves and also about others. So, these gender stereotypes, they basically emerge when these roles become very, very rigid. Okay, and either they become very rigid or they become very simplified. And these gender roles, they ultimately lead the entire society towards assumptions and prejudices. Now, what assumptions and prejudices do we have? That a man can do this, a man cannot do this or should not do this. The women can do this, the women cannot do this. So, as we have seen very, very simply, when a boy child grows up in his life, there are stereotypes that boys do not cry. Okay, this whatever examples I have been taking, they are all mentioned in the book itself. Okay, now it is expected that girls may not be very good at athletics. Okay, the girls may not be interested in playing outdoor games. They also assume that girls are bad at maths. Now we have seen that boys are often attributed towards a limited emotional expression. Okay, and similarly the academic potential for girls. Now these stereotypes are not harmless. They are basically restricting the conditioning of an individual. Okay, they restrict the conditioning, they restrict the choices, they often influence the career paths. Okay, and this is something that culminates into inequality in the society. Clear? So often in UPSC as well as in your personal interviews, the questions are asked around these social conditioning. Okay, now you must understand what all are the roots of the discrimination and what all are the interventions and the effective policies which are aimed at breaking these stereotypes. Okay, so when we start off now, when we move into this topic, we must also understand that how essentially this topic can be asked in your exam. Okay, now when we talk about this topic, this cannot be asked directly in the exam, okay, in prelims. Okay, but it becomes a foundational topic in GS paper 1 when we talk about society, in GS paper 2 when we talk about social justice. So this topic will help you understand the construction of gender in the society. You will be able to understand, you will be able to explore how the upbringing of boys and girls are different, how the upbringing of a child shapes the personality, overall personality of an individual, and how they prepare themselves to take up different roles throughout their lives. Clear? So we can understand that this topic, okay, even though do not contribute directly to your preparation, but the contribution of this topic is very significant. Okay, conceptual and analytical questions are being asked across various papers in the exam. Okay, now the themes around gender roles, the stereotypes, the work, okay, as our constitution also demands equal pay for equal work for men and women. Okay, and if the constitution is demanding, then constitution is assuming and might be correct in assuming that there are inequalities and discriminations that have been existing in the society. Okay, and thus the questions around this test of discrimination have been asked in the exam. Okay, so usually in the examination we will find that you will have to answer questions around the critical evaluation or the critical appreciation around the government interventions, the norms in the societies. Okay, wherein in the examination like prelims you will find questions coming directly from the schemes that have been launched in order to overcome these societal injustices. Clear? Chaliye. So now let us deep dive into this topic, okay, and understand the gender roles that have been stereotyped by the society. Clear? Chaliye. Now, first and foremost, also let me tell you what all are the dimensions of gender inequality. Now, when we talk about the dimensions of gender inequality in the country, okay, first and a very prominent disparity or a dimension of inequality is the economic inequality. Economic inequality, there have been wages gap, okay, the informal sector, okay, the women are more concentrated into the informal sector, okay, that is widely seen. Okay, second thing is that is becoming a greater issue these days is political underrepresentation. Now, this is again a greater issue. Then there are social and cultural norms that have been existing around women. There are patriarchal traditions, there are gender stereotyping that is being done. Okay. And also, if we see that there are various issues around health and nutrition of the women. Health and nutrition of the women. Now, along with this, you will find that there are higher rates of anemia in women. Okay, the maternal mortality rate is an issue. Okay, along with this, you will find that gender-based healthcare has been existing in the underdeveloped society. There have been issues like the sex selective abortion taking place. Okay, the healthcare access is again an issue in the underdeveloped society. There have been issues, also issues around the violence and security of the women. Clear? We have seen that there have been n number of cases around domestic violence, sexual harassment, human trafficking, lack of safety in public spaces. Okay, issues like child marriages. Now, these all are the various dimensions of gender equality that have existed in our society. Okay, now when we move deep into it, okay, we will see that there have been some various examples that have also been existing in the society. Okay, now this topic, it will help you to understand essentially the ideas around gender inequalities that have developed in the place of work, and it will also describe the women's struggle for equality. Okay, now when we see in this topic, okay, you will understand that being a boy or a girl, okay, has been an important part of one's identity. Okay, during the growing up age itself, okay, the society, the family, the school, it teaches you that what all are the acceptable roles for your gender specific. Okay, and we often have been thinking that is it right that what all we have been doing. Clear? Now, this society, this topic starts with a very good example of the society in Samoa. Okay, now Samoa Islands are basically a part of large group of small islands in the southern part of Pacific Ocean. Okay, now during 1920s, a research was conducted in the Samoan society. Why it was conducted? Because they found that children were not going to the schools, but even while they were not going to the school, they learned many things, such as how to take care of children or do household work. Okay, from older children and from the adults. Okay, fishing was very important activity in the island. The young people therefore learned to undertake long fishing expeditions. Okay, but these things they learned at different ages of their childhood. Now, as soon as a baby was found walking, their mothers or the other adults, they did not look after them. They were made to be more independent. Okay, they were made to be more self-sufficient. Okay, older children, as young as 5 years old, they took over the responsibilities. Both the boys as well as the girls, they essentially had the responsibilities to look after their younger siblings. Okay, but by that time, a boy was about 9 years old. A boy was seen to have been joining the older boys in learning outdoor activities like fishing, like planting coconuts. Okay. And girls, moreover, had the responsibility to look after the small children or to take up the household work. Okay. But once they became teenagers, they had much more freedom. So it was seen that after the age of 14 years or so, girls also started going on fishing trips. They also worked in plantation. They learned how to take up the roles like weaving basket. Cooking was also carried out. and the boys were supposed to do most of the work while the girls helped them with their preparations. Okay, so this was seen as the students, they were found not to be going to the schools. Okay, on the contrary, the studies were also made up in the studies were also done in India. Okay, in the society of Madhya Pradesh in 1960s. Okay, it was seen that from class 6th onwards, the boys and girls, they started going to separate schools. Okay, now this phenomena of separate schools, even though uh, many people in the society might be advocating the concept of separate schools for boys and girls, but I personally am of this opinion that there should be co-ed schools. Okay, now why this is something that why I'm taking up extra. Okay, because previously UPSC has been very vocal about topics like gender sensitization. Okay, so when you see examples like these in NCERT, this is something that you can quote in your answers. Okay, and gender sensitization has always been a very, very important topic. Okay, or not just topic, it is something that also contributes to the mental maturity of children of the society as whole. We will see why gender sensitization is more important, even though you might have seen attitude of a boy who has been studying in only boys school. Okay, a girl who has studied in only girls schools, you might have seen that how they do have different assumptions and prejudices in their minds. Okay, now, this was seen that from class 6, the girls as well as the boys, they had started to go in separate schools. Okay. Now, it was noticed that the girls' school was designed very differently from the boys' schools. The boys, they had a central courtyard. Okay. Okay. Sorry, the girls, they had a central courtyard. Okay. And the girls used to play in total seclusion from this. Okay, they did not have any interaction, okay, from in a larger playground. Okay, and they essentially, it was seen that girls should be playing in the seclusion to safeguard them from the outside world. Now, in comparison, it was seen that the boys schools did not have such a small courtyard or a small playground. Okay, and their playground was just a big area that was attached to the school itself. Okay, now, when the school was over daily, okay, the boys watched as hundreds of schoolgirls, they crowded through the narrow streets. Okay, on the streets, it was seen that girls, when they walked through the streets, okay, they walked in a very purposeful manner. What was their purpose? The ultimate aim was to just reach their homes. Okay, now this was very much unlike the attitude of the boys. Now they used to basically keep on exploring things around while they were going. They were found standing idly around the roadsides. Okay, they were playing, they were having tricks, they were also enjoying with their bicycles. But for the girls, the street was simply the place to go straight to their houses. The girls always went in groups. Okay, and perhaps it was because they also carried fears from being teased and from being attacked. Okay, so this is how the society has molded the persona of a girl in comparison to a boy. Now, while I took this example of gender sensitization, this is something that can be taken up here as a solution. Okay, now we ultimately realize that there are, even though there are various ways of growing in the society, but we think that around a gender there is only limited and specific ways. Now, this is because we are familiar with only those limited ways through our experiences. Okay, even if we talk to our elders in our family, we will also see that their childhood was probably different from ours. Okay. We also realize that societies, they make a clear distinction in between boys and girls, and the distinction does not start at a later age, it starts at very young age. Okay. You will see that as a young child, as a toddler, okay, the toys that have been given to the boys are usually different from those given to the girls. Girls are usually given dolls to play, boys are given cards to play. Okay, so this is how the stereotype works. Okay, now the question should be that why girls are given dolls and why boys are given cars. Okay, so they become a way of telling these children that they will have different futures when they grow up into a man or a woman. Okay, how girls must dress, what games boys should play, how girls need to talk, how boys need to be rough, how they have to be manly. So these are specific ways that have been telling children that they have specific roles when they grow up. Okay, now this is something that affects the boy as well as the girl. Okay, even when they have to go for studies, even when they have to choose careers for themselves. Okay, we have seen that in most of the societies, okay, including our own society, the roles men and women play or the work they do, they are that is not valued equally. Men and women, they do not have the same status. Okay, and this is something that we can learn just by taking example from our house itself. Okay, now herein a very good example has been given. Okay, now how example has been given, this is basically families of two children, Harmeet and Shonali. Okay, now one day, okay, when Shonali goes to her house, she asks her mother that, mother, we have been going for an excursion, school excursion, and their teacher needs a volunteer. Now, you have been going to your workplace, to your office daily. So, I would request you to take holiday from your office for one day and volunteer with us with the school excursion. When Shonali's mother, she negates this suggestion. Shonali gives an example of Harmeet's mother. Okay, and she says that Harmeet's mother comes daily with us. Okay, and why does she come daily with us? Because she does not have to go out to work. Now, this was something that Shonali's mother caught up immediately. Okay, now Shonali's mother told her that how can you say this? Okay, that Harmeet's mother does not work, and it is not that since she is a homemaker, thus she is free, and this is the reason that she is volunteering out. Okay, no. Now she told her daughter Shonali that the lady who is managing the entire house has to wake up very early daily. She is waking up at 5 a.m. She is doing all the housework. Okay, but her daughter Shonali, she responds that since that is not the real work, okay, and what you are doing, that is the real work. Now, in order to make things very clear to Shonali as well as to give a message in the society, she takes her to Harmeet's mother, okay, house. Okay, tells her that my daughter Shonali thinks that Harmeet's mother, okay, is not a working person. Okay, now in this, Harmeet also says, okay, auntie, that is very correct because my mother is a housewife, wife, she does not work. It was then that Harmeet's mother decided to convey her importance in a very subtle manner. Okay, she told her that for tomorrow I'll go on a strike. Okay, and I'll not undertake any work that I usually do. Now, Harmeet and his father, even though they were very casual about this, okay, it doesn't matter to us, okay, we will manage everything on our own. Harmeet was also excited, I'll do everything with my father. Okay, but what happens next day is that since Harmeet's mother did not wake him up, did not prepare him for the school, did not prepare lunch boxes for him. Okay, now that day they had to experience various things. Okay, usually this was everything that was well taken care of by the lady, but since she was not working for that day, Harmeet was late. He has to miss his school bus, and his father had to drop him to the school. The lunch was not ready. Okay, and Harmeet's father paid him, gave him some money that he should buy something from the canteen. Okay, the variety of activities from filling up the water tanks of the house, every other task was delayed that day. Okay, so ultimately people came to know that day that even though a lady might not be working formally in a regulated environment, but it does not mean that a homemaker is free. Okay, now why this topic becomes important? Earlier, what I had planned is that I should not have been taking this topic since it does not contribute to Indian polity. But why did I take this topic? Because this topic has high relevance for UPSC 2026 mains as well as for 2027 prelims. Why? Supreme Court has assumed rupees 30,000, okay, as the compensation for a homemaker. Okay, the work that she has been undertaking is minimum of this worth. Clear? So while you have been writing this example, while you have been going through various topics, you must understand that how UPSC can ask this question in your exam. Okay, so this is how the student must be able to link up things. Clear? So now this is how the housework has not been valued. Okay, Harmeet's family did not think that the work his mother was doing was the real work. Okay, and this is the feeling which is not unique to their family, it is across the world. The main responsibility of housework and caregiving task, like looking after the family, especially elderly, sick members, it lies with the women. Yet, we have seen the work that women do within the home is not recognized as work. It is also assumed that this is something that comes naturally to the women. It therefore does not have to be paid for, and thus society has been devaluing this. Now, it is not Harmeet, it is also about their house help, Mangla. Okay, it is also about their household Mangla. Okay, Harmeet's mother was not only the one who did the housework. A lot of a lot of domestic helps have also been employed in the houses. Okay, particularly in towns and cities, people employ domestic workers who do a lot of work: sweeping, cleaning, washing clothes and dishes, cooking, looking after young children, elderly, and most domestic workers are women. Sometimes we will see even young boys and girls are also employed to do this work. The wages are low, and as domestic workers, their work is not often valued. Okay, despite the hard work they do, their employers often do not show acknowledgement, they do not show respect to them. Clear? So, this is what these domestic workers have to go through. Okay, often the domestic workers who are employed in the houses, they are not even given good meals. Okay, they are not even provided with basic amenities in the house. Okay, so this is something that commonly, something that we term as housework, actually involves many different tasks. Okay, a number of tasks that require very heavy physical work as well. Okay, moreover, in urban as well as in rural areas, the women and girls have to undertake many such tasks that involves a large amount of physical work or heavy loads to be taken up. Okay, we have seen that in the rural areas, the girls and women have to carry heavy loads, they have to fetch water, they have to take up head loads of firewood. Okay, and these are a few tasks, okay, which are requiring high strength. Okay, so along with the tasks, like washing clothes, cleaning, sweeping, picking up loads, it all requires a large amount of physical activities. The work women do is strenuous and is physically demanding. Okay, and when we say that women have been doing work strenuous and physically demanding, this is something that is generally associated with men. Okay, moreover, another aspect of housework and caregiving that we do not recognize is that it is again time consuming. If we add up the housework and the work, okay, that women have been doing inside and outside the house, we will find that women spend much more time working than men and have much less time for leisure. Okay, so a study was also undertaken by the Central Statistical Organization, okay, wherein it was seen that even though women are not being paid, how much work they have been doing. Okay, so this topic ultimately talks about a very important feature, okay, that is the women's work and equality. We have seen the low value that is attached to women's household and caregiving work, which is not an individual or a family matter. Okay, it is again part of a larger system of inequality that has been existing in the society in between men and women, and thus it has to be dealt with thorough actions. Okay, and it is not just that solution has to be found out at the individual level, but also at the family level. Okay, now we have seen that equality has been an important principle of our constitution. The constitution says that being a male or a female should not be a reason of discrimination. Okay, but inequality exists between the sexes. Okay, the government is therefore committed to understand the reasons for this. Okay, the government must come up with positive steps and interventions as a remedy to this. Okay, we have seen that the burden of childcare and housework falls on women and girls. Okay, and this is the reason that essentially we have seen that has been impacting the studies, impacting the professional careers, professional future of the women. Okay, now we have also seen that it also determines whether women can work outside the house and what kinds of jobs and careers they can have. The government in the rural areas have set up Anganwadis or the childcare centers in several villages across the country, and government has also passed laws that make it mandatory for organizations that have more than 30 women employees to provide crash facilities to them. Crash facilities wherein they can come along with their children and children can be well taken care of. So the provision of these crashes, it helps many women to take up employment outside the homes, and it also makes it possible for more girls to attend schools. Clear? So these have been a few challenges. There have been a few interventions by the government that has been playing a very, very important role. Clear? Okay. So it is ultimately something that we must understand. Okay, so about the women meeting up with challenges. Okay, next, on my channel. Here I'll be sharing all the DMI Smart NCERT series. Along with this, the still working. Okay, the admissions will close on 21st of July, and this time the GS Foundation batches are available with as low prices as 7,999. Okay, so please do not miss this opportunity. Okay, do not miss this opportunity. Do subscribe to these courses. Okay, now herein you just need to use the code SRM Live to avail maximum discount. Okay, and to avail this course, you just need to use this code SRM Live. Clear?